become an outcome-based rather than an income-based, even within your own institution. In your own institution, you're still going to have levels. The focus needs to be on outcomes. And what I'm just addressing here is we have a problem, and that may be a national problem that you have with some people that are automatically being pushed in this direction.
Even so far as anybody here, between any staff here, I think in this hall, they, in his CV, they check that he has a pass in his previous certificate, even in school, high school, or even bachelor degree.
Right.
So they won't give him or give him any chance.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to tell you that your country's wrong. What I'm going to tell you is that system is not going to work in the 21st century. That system is going to hold people back. Because if you look at the data is very clear. We change our jobs 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 times. It's a global and international world. You're having to be able to move places. We talked to a professor yesterday and tried to tell him it's not necessarily what goes on in Jordan, it's what goes on in Saudi Arabia, what goes on in Kuwait, or what goes on in China, or what goes on in Kuala Lumpur, or Europe, or whatever. Do you want your students just to learn here, or do you want them to learn here? We had a meeting just before we came in, and the issue was, how do we connect? How do we connect Mu'tah with Ohio University? Well, are you just connecting just for the purpose of connecting, or are you connecting for the purpose of expansion of knowledge? Of expansion of your culture, understanding somebody else's culture. How do your students understand somebody else's culture? So, we got to move on. This is just some of the literature, particularly American literature, and you can start to see that, as I said, the United States really does not have a governmental push or a governmental authority on higher education. However, I can tell you that in 2006, the Presidential Commission on Leadership in Higher Education wanted to move in that direction. And so what you had was a big pushback from our accrediting agencies, which are private entities made up by the universities to establish their quality. And so we kind of dodged the bullet of having the government tell us what to do. In each one of the next 5, the first book is Academically Adrift, and there's the concept that faculty oftentimes are disconnected from an institutional movement towards assessment. They're very focused on what they're doing, but when the university comes, and I can see that in your government, right? Your government is going to decide what you're going to do. You have no input on policy. Well, that's academically adrift. Academically adrift talks about the disconnect between the faculty input on assessment, on performance assessment, and governmental or institutional. The second one is closing the accountability gap, and that talks for more faculty involvement. That basically says we need to get more faculty involved in this kind of thing. Let me go back to academically adrift. That tends to be a more United States issue. I'm not sure it's an issue here. Maybe faculty can tell me, maybe the students can tell me, but you know, the idea that students they come to college, they go to college, and their expectation is that they do the least amount of work that they can possibly do. Do you students want to do more work? You want to do more work? I'm sorry? Yeah, that's a novel concept. That's a novel concept. According to Academically Adrift, now are you graduate students? You're an undergraduate student. That's a real novel concept. This is the problem in the United States higher education. 60% of American students go through higher education not wanting hard work, not wanting to be molded into better positions. They just want to go through. And there is this equilibrium between the faculty, and the faculty are focused on research. The faculty say, you know, the less I can be in contact with students, the less work I'll give them, the more time I'll have to do research. The students, they're just waiting to get finished with class so they can move on to the next thing. All right? That's what academically drift is about. It's a frightening situation. Richard Hirsch, in Declining by Degrees, document in the United States talks about this 60% that's floating. You start to get foundations that are basically, the Lumina Foundation has really studied this concept of how do we change this paradigm? How do we change the paradigm from this input or this existing thing where students are just going to class and just, what we in the United States call it, pay tuition is the cover charge for the party, and they're busy doing all this other kind of stuff. What the Lumina says is that you need to be focused on what students know and what they can do as a result of going to college. And so they're one of the first to start really focusing on outputs, outcomes, that they level. A student that's in an associate's degree needs to know this. A student that is in a bachelor's degree program needs to know this. A student that's in a master's program needs to know this. And we'll talk a little bit about those universal learning outcomes when I get to that piece. Learning Reconsidered, and there's Learning Reconsidered 1 and Learning Reconsidered 2, are two documents, one by NASPA, National Student Personnel Administrators, and the other one, the Association of College Personnel Administrators. They wrote, along with a number of other professional associations, these documents that basically say learning occurs in and out of the classroom. And so what we're trying to do is, and one of the things that I do, because I focus most of my work outside of the classroom, is what do you do outside of the classroom? Do you guys belong in any clubs? No clubs. Say what? Education clubs or social clubs? You belong to a cultural club, right? Anybody else belong to a cultural club? Is a Islamic club? A religious club? What we suggest is that you should belong to clubs. Alexander Aston, who's a professor at UCLA, talks about learning in and out of the classroom. So you don't just go to classroom just to go to class. You go to class, you go to college for the experience of meeting other people, the experience of experiencing other cultures. And what Learning Reconsidered says, check the airflow. What these documents basically say is that learning goes on outside the classroom as well as inside the classroom. So what we would suggest is with your cultural club, you identify learning outcomes. What do you hope to learn from that experience? All right, we'll talk about that because that may be something that you want to work with on a project. Somebody want to blow up there? Accountability is not an American issue. Accountability is looked at all over the world. So if you look at this, you can see the little UNESCO over the side of it, but basically, almost all higher education programs around the world are looking at this accountability issue. To whom are we accountable? What do we want out of our students when they graduate from college? It can't be just